Hello everyone and welcome to today's advanced walkthrough. My name is Itai and I'm a customer success manager here at monday.com. I want to thank you all for joining me. So today I'm taking you with me on a bit of a more advanced journey through our platform to uncover some of the advanced features and show you how you can take your workflows to the next level and become an expert in monday.com. Before we start, I wanted to let you know about the way these webinars work. So we have 3 different product demo levels: basic, intermediate, and advanced. These webinars expose different features of monday.com to help you grasp the simpler parts first, and then moving on and improving your workflow with the more advanced features. The webinar today is the 3rd and final webinar in the series, and so we won't be going over the things we covered in the previous 2 webinars, but I will do a basic overview. If you want to attend those webinars before you do this one, I encourage you to do so. You can sign up for them through our webinar hub at monday.com/webinars/live. So you guys already know what monday.com is, but let's just do a quick recap. So monday.com can be used for so many different things that it falls under the category of a work OS, or a work operating system. A flexible platform to manage all of your workflows in one place and to make your work processes easier, smoother, and more effective. So today we will cover our more advanced features, which will help us understand some of Monday's more elaborate capabilities. So to get started today, we're going to do a quick recap of the things we covered in the 2 previous webinars. Then we're going to check out some of our more advanced columns and how we can use them. I'll take you through our views center and how we can implement some of our views into the workflows. We'll take a closer look at using automations in a more sophisticated way to really power your entire workflow and make everything a little bit more advanced. We'll also take a look at some more advanced integrations as well. Finally, we will cover reporting capabilities headlined by our incredible dashboards. So this should be covered in about 40 minutes. After I will address as many of your questions as I can. Please post those in the Q&A box throughout the webinar. Okay, so let's hop right into my monday.com account. Great. As you can see here, these are my boards. So the board, as you already know, of monday.com is the backbone of the company. This is where the magic happens on the platform. And for today's walkthrough, our use case will continue the use case of the previous 2 webinars. So for those of you who did not attend, no need to worry. I will clarify. Our use case is covering a team working in a creative agency. Okay, so since the previous webinar is focused on a more basic board structure and features, today we'll take another leap forward and we'll walk through managing a high-level board as you see here. This will allow you to gain quick insight on your endeavors and prioritize all things that should remain top of mind. If the previous webinar is focused on how to manage just one single project or handling incoming requests from clients, today we're going to come full circle and see how to use all these boards together into a complete streamlined workflow. Make sense? Cool. So again, if you don't have anything to do with creative agencies or you come from a completely different industry, that's okay. No need to worry. You can use these examples that we're going to show today for any industry or any vertical. Just apply the principles and the features we're going to see today to any one of your boards or your workflows, no matter what industry you're coming from. So just a quick recap of the basic webinar first. So as you see here on the left-hand side, we have our 3 different boards from our webinar. So I labeled these 1, 2, and 3, 1 being our high-level board, which we're going to focus on today, 2, our incoming project board, which was the focus of the intermediate webinar, and 3, the low-level project board. So the basic webinar first covered just the general structure of your account and your boards. We went over some of the most commonly used columns, as you can see here, the status column, the timeline. We actually talked about the timeline view as well, as you can see here. And we also focused on communication within the platform, within the update section and our notifications, whether it be in our notification bell or inboxes. On the back end of that webinar, we showed you how to use the search and filter capabilities inside the board, as you can see here. And in the intermediate webinar, we moved on to handling our incoming project requests from our clients, which you can see on this board. So as you can see, all the information here has come from our clients, which used our wonderful form view, which was outlined in this webinar. I won't show you how to set this up here. So if you haven't had a chance to check this out, I highly recommend you take a look at the intermediate webinar. We can see the whole setup there and exactly how it will be applied and how all this information gets collected from those forms. Great, so what are we going to focus on today? Today we're going to focus on the high-level board. As you see here, we have a high-level board that I pre-made, obviously. But before we dive in, what is a high-level board? A high-level board is a way of managing multiple projects at a macro level. So a high-level board can be organized by quarters, by months, by phases, clients or projects, different locations, or any way that works for your workflow. For this use case, I set up this board so each group represents a quarter of the month. So Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. Within each group, each item represents a new project request that has been approved by our team. So let's quickly go over the structure of our board and the more basic columns first, and then we'll move on to the more advanced columns that we've all come here to see. So going over just the structure, as you can see, I used the people column here to assign our project manager to each project. This will obviously notify them in multiple different ways that we talked about in the basic webinar. Next, we have a status column, which shows me the overall stage of each project. Again, this is a high-level board, so I want to keep things as clear as possible to get a very clear understanding of where we're at. So these labels, these are the labels I'm using. I can obviously change these accordingly. Next to that, we have our drop-down column, which allows my team to choose different values from a drop-down list. So this is very similar to our status label. The biggest difference here is I can choose multiple labels at once. So here, if I have multiple different types of services I am providing for this client, I can add more than one label. So very handy and very useful. Next to that, we have our date column, which I am using for the due date here to obviously give us an indication of when the client wants the final product to be ready. Next to that, we have another date column, which I will use for the start date. Again, very straightforward. This will be used for some of our automations, so we'll talk about that a bit later. The same thing goes for our next status label here for the different queues. So as you can see, each status here is Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. This will tie into our automations a bit later. We'll touch on that. And finally, we have a numbers column here just to estimate the work time each project will take. Okay, so now we're going to hop on to some of our more advanced columns. So our first advanced column will be the connect boards column, which you see here is already set up, this column specifically. So the connect board column allows us to easily link this board to another board. So in this case, the corresponding project, where we break down the project into individual tasks. So the IKEA project here, I've linked it to the IKEA board, the low-level IKEA board here, and I can simply track all the tasks that are inside that board. Okay, so this obviously helps to keep both boards aligned and help us save time switching between the boards. So once we've chosen the board and items that we want to link to, we can add the mirror column, which we can see here, to display one or more columns of the connected board's items. So here I've chosen to mirror the status column from that board. And as you can see here, the statuses are reflected in kind of a battery look, so I can get a summary of where we're at. 4 out of 7 are done, 1 out of 7 is working, and so on. So just to get a better understanding, this is the low-level board it's connected to, and this is the link column that we saw. Okay, and as you can see, all the statuses are corresponding to the high-level board. If I change anything on here, they will change accordingly to here. So just to show you how to set this up, I'm going to go ahead and add a new column from our column center. I'll search connect. And then I'll be prompted to choose a board which I want to connect to. So to create a two-way board connection, select the board. So I will select a different board just for the sake of this example. We'll choose the Build-A-Bear board, link the boards, and then we'll be asked if we want to mirror columns. So I'm going to go ahead and press the mirror columns, which will add a mirror column automatically. And here we can choose which columns we want to mirror. So status, timeline, due date, and so on. So again, very easily set up. And once again, this is a two-way connection. So whatever is changed here will be aligned for both boards. Great. So let me just delete this so we don't get confused later on. Great. So to show you the next column I want to speak about, I will be moving to our low-level board, so the IKEA board we were just on. As we said earlier, this board is just a single project board with all the tasks that we have that need to get done. Now, these tasks oftentimes will rely on one another, meaning one cannot start without the other one being completed. That's where the dependency column comes into play. So this is actually one of my favorite columns because it gives me the ability to create vital connections between items that will help to better manage my project. Okay, so to set this up, I will go into our column center once again. I'll press more columns and I will search for the dependency column and press add to board. When we add this column to our board, we will be prompted to this window where we will need to choose a date column or a timeline column to connect the items through. So for my case, I only have just one timeline column, so easy enough. But if you do have multiple date or timeline columns, please make sure you choose the correct ones in order to set this up properly. So once we have chosen the correct column, I will connect the columns. And as you can see, I have this new column with this link icon next to it. And we will now set this up. So first of all, I want to show you that whenever you create a dependency column, you'll get a new automation automatically. As you can see, that it just popped up on its own. This is a default automation that will pop up. So it will tell you to ensure that the timeline of an item always starts after the date of its dependent on item, right? So pretty straightforward, just to make sure things are happening in sequence and in order, which is great. For our use case, I'm going to go for a bit more complex automation. So I will delete this one and we'll set up a new automation for dependencies. So we are now inside our automation center. We'll go down to the categories of dependencies. And here you can see we have a few options. The option I'm going to go with for this specific board is this one. So to adjust the date of an item to reflect the changes made in the date of its dependency item. Essentially saying that if one of my tasks gets moved back by a couple days, by 2 or 3 days, the next task will also be pushed back by 3 days, and so on and so forth, just to make sure nothing is overlapped and that all of my tasks are adjusted accordingly. So we'll add this to the board. We'll just set this up quickly. I'll choose my timeline and I'll choose my only dependency column and add that to the board. And now all that is left to do is to connect the items upon their dependencies. So setting this up is also very simple. What we want to do is to assign each task to be dependent on the previous task, right? So we'll go from the second task to the first. So the second task will be dependent on the initial meeting task, which is the first. Our third task will be dependent on our second task, and so on and so forth. So confirm budget, it's the third task. This will be dependent on the creative marketing assets. This will be on the final review. And our last task will be dependent on the launch campaign task. Right, so again, just to sum this up, they're all dependent on one task beforehand. Okay, so simple enough. Now let's watch live how this automation works, the one we set up just a minute ago. So we'll move this back from December 3rd to December 5th, for example. So we'll keep the start date 24th. But let's say we got delayed and we need to push it back to December 5th. We'll watch how each date gets pushed back by 2 days. So again, very powerful tool. We see how this moved along. Very simple to use, and really make sure you're on top of everything. I just want to mention that in the future, we're also going to have cross-board dependencies as well, so we can really take things to a whole new level. But for now, we can use this on the board level. And I actually want to show you a very cool new feature we've released very recently, which is our visual dependencies. So obviously we can see our dependencies here, but it's not the clearest, right? What's connected to what? We have to kind of look back and forth. That's why we created the visual dependency option. So if we go into our timeline view, which we went over in our basic webinar, this is a timeline view we're familiar with. Basically just showing our tasks on a timeline, much more visual way. Now if we go into the settings and we change our option of viewing into Gantt mode, we'll actually get an option to show the dependencies themselves. So as you can see, my showing dependency option is ticked off, and these are all connected with the arrows in a much more visual way. As you can see, this is much more clear and much more visual than the board earlier. So again, very exciting stuff. I recommend you check this out and use this for your workflow. Let's move on to our next advanced column. So our next column will be one of our most powerful advanced columns, which is our formula column. So this column can be incredibly useful to customize your workflow. It can help you make calculations, display values, or even gain insights right from your board. So the great thing about this column is that it gives you all the tools to build your formula right from inside the cell. So let me just show you. This is an example of our formula column. If I open this up, you'll see all these options. So on the left side, you'll have all the columns you have existing on your board. So again, very easily, you can pull this information straight into the formula. And if I scroll down a bit, you'll see all of our available functions. So if I scroll all the way down, you'll see we have many functions. Each function comes with a short definition and even an example of how you can set this up properly. So again, just to cover the example I've set up here, this is an if function. So in this example, we want to show if the time we estimated a task would take lines up with the actual hours it took. So let's first define what an if condition is. So an if condition checks if a condition is met, right? So pretty straightforward. If a condition is something and it is true, it will show value X. If it's false, it will show Y. If it's equal to it, it will show something else. So as you can see, what I've set up here, if actual hours equals estimated hours, then on point. If actual hours is greater than estimated hours, then it's over. If it isn't, then it's under. So as you can see, it is lined up here and gives me the correct results as well. It's very important to note that when using a formula column, we need to make sure that the comma and brackets here are used correctly. Okay, so these little details might sometimes cause your formula to fail, actually. So the system needs to receive the exact correct formula in order to perform it. So just make sure you've closed the brackets accordingly, whether it needs 2 parentheses and if the commas are lined up as well as the language you want to use in the result. What does that mean? The values I've set up here are on point, over and under. Those have to be inside quotations. So again, something to point out. If you do want to learn more about formulas, we have a webinar just focused on our formulas and different examples. So I'd suggest you check that out in our knowledge base center. Just to see another example of how the formula column can be used in a bit more complex way, I'm going to jump to another low-level board I have here. Which is a Build-A-Bear project board, very similar to our IKEA board. I just want to focus on the formula here. So I actually use 2 formula columns here. First, I have a formula column to differentiate how many days were different here, right? So if I can calculate the number of days that were either early or late based on a due date and the actual completed date, I can see that here. And based off of this answer, I can actually get a visual of what was done overdue, what was done on time, what is still pending, and what is overdue. So again, just a bit more complex formula in terms of using different icons and the length of the formula, but if you look at it, it's just a basic if formula as well. This formula will actually be super helpful in later seeing how we can use this for reporting in our dashboards. So just keep this in mind, and we'll get back to this a bit later. All right, so now we're going to hop back into our high-level board and kind of talk about different views we have, specifically on our resource allocation view, which is otherwise known as our workload view. So again, to enter our views, I press on this arrow down here and go into workload. Okay, so now what we're looking at here is our workload widget, workload view, excuse me. So you can get a clear overview of how your team's work is divided. So you can see in one glance who is over the capacity and assign upcoming tasks accordingly. If needed, you can always reassign or change the tasks right from here, and to make sure everything stays on target with the amount of tasks that can be completed within that time frame. So again, if you want to move certain tasks or change different tasks, you can actually do it right from this view. So let's just open this up and focus on this task, for example, and you could change any value you want here, whether it be the status, whether it be the due dates, and so on. So again, very, very useful. So to measure the workload of your team members, you'll want to make sure your board contains a few things, right? So we have to make sure we have a people column so we can manage our people, obviously, working on the tasks, a date column or a timeline column as well. And if you want, you can also add a number or formula column so you can set the effort limitation. Okay, so now we need to choose which resource type we want to be represented in the workload view. So let's open up our settings and kind of go down the line here and see the different things. So first of all, the time column we've chosen to see is the due date. That's what we're basing it off of. Next, we have our resource type. So the resource type basically gives you the option to see how you view this widget. So right now I've chosen the project manager, so I've divided this so I can clearly see what each one is working on and how much they're working on. If I want to see by different resources, I can also choose by status, by queue, and so on. Okay? All right, so in our use case here, I've chosen to divide the workload by project manager. As you can see, we can display the data in a couple of different ways. Right below our resource type, our next option here is to measure the effort by either counting items or effort. So counting items, if I choose to count items, each item that is assigned to that person will be counted as one and displayed on the board as such, as you can see. But sometimes some of our tasks take a bit more effort to carry out, and the weights aren't exactly the same of each project, like in this use case. So in our use case, we're using the time estimation column that will help us out. This setting works both with a number column and a formula column, I do want to point out. So again, here I just have a basic number column, which is the estimated work time to display. And now we can decide how we decide to split the effort or divide the effort. So we can choose to either sum up the effort all at once, or we can split it up if we have more than one person working on one project. In our case, we have just one project manager for one project, so I've decided to sum these up. And let's just quickly define what each bubble means. So as you can see here, we have a couple different bubbles, blue, red, we have a check mark in one of them. So what do these mean? The blue bubble refers to the person that is below the maximum amount of effort. So we can keep assigning them tasks if we need to. The bubble with a check, the blue bubble with the check mark, means they're right at their weekly capacity, as you can see here. And the red bubble obviously means that they are over their weekly capacity limit, and we should probably lay off the workload here and maybe disperse it somewhere else. So again, very visual way of seeing your team's resource allocation and how the work should be dispersed. Another very popular view we have is the chart view. This is just a very basic breakdown of the how many projects we have in each quarter here. Again, this could be altered to different types of charts. We can also choose whether to count the items or estimate work time. We have a few different settings here. As you can see, I've set a benchmark limit here of 10. You can set the benchmark line in different colors and so on. But this is pretty straightforward, but very, very powerful as well, just in an analytical sense. So I encourage you guys to mess around with these and check them out. If you have more questions about those, please reach out to our wonderful support. All right, so next I want to talk about something very new and powerful that we came out with recently. This is, of course, our Monday apps, which are basically a new framework we've developed. And this is a really huge step for our platform because we're improving our Work OS to fit even more and more teams' needs. And Monday apps allows any developer to add functionality to their own or other people's accounts. So this really helps to go above and beyond what the platform can already do. You can install an app that adds a specific either integration, you can unlock a new view or widget, and you can combine these with your own. So the app features can be used on your boards and dashboards just like our native views, widgets, and integration. And the best part, they're seamless. So no extra setup is required. Let me just show you how you can access these apps. So first of all, inside our View Center, we have our in-house made apps, which you can access through here. And just kind of check these out. Or you can go to our external marketplace, which you could be found through your avatar, clicking on your avatar and going to under Explore, Apps Marketplace, where you can find a whole variety of different apps under different verticals, CRMs, team management, integrations, collaborations, the list goes on and on. This is really, really powerful. Really encourage you guys to check this out. We actually had a webinar just on the marketplace, so if you're interested, please check that out as well. All right, now we're going to move on to our incoming project board just to quickly cover another feature we have in terms of restrictions and permissions. So in our intermediate webinar, we covered the board permissions and different board permissions we have. So just a quick overview on that. If you go into your three-dot menu up here and go into your board permissions, you'll see these 4 different available permissions. This was covered in more detail in the intermediate webinar. What I want to focus on right now is the column level permissions. So some columns here might be a bit more sensitive than others, and maybe I'm not ready to share them with the entire team. That's why I want to ensure that only the right people see them. So for that, we have the column permissions, where you can hide a column from certain people or block the editing option for certain users as well. So for example here, we have an estimated budget column, which again deals with money, and I'm not sure I want everyone to see these. As you can see, I've already set up a restriction of viewing people. You can see that by this icon. Now let me just show you how you can set this up. You can enter the column menu here and go into column permissions. I'll just remove this restriction so you can see how I can add it again. So again, going into the column menu, column permission, restrict column view. As you can see, I am prompted to choose whether I want to add more people that can see this column or just keep myself and be the only person who can see this column. Great. Another example we have here for the editing restriction would be the phone numbers, right? So I want to make sure that no one messes with the phone numbers, no one accidentally deletes or changes the phone numbers. So I've placed a editing restriction here, which is iconed by the lock. Very similarly, you can go into your column permissions and either remove the restriction or add it once again, restrict column edit, and decide who can edit this column and who won't be able to edit. Great, so now that we've got this covered, let's talk about automations on this board and throughout this workflow. So like we said earlier, we want to reduce our manual work and focus on really what's important. And that's why I've already set up some automations, 8 to be exact, as you can see up here. Just to recap for those who haven't attended the previous webinars, automations use a certain event in Monday, like a change of a status, for example, to cause something else to happen, like sending a notification, okay? So we have a trigger and an action. The automations save you time by not doing repetitive work, really doing the repetitive work for you, and really giving you the time to use for really what's important on your workflow and focus on being productive. So let's take a look at our Automation Center and check these out. So if we go into our Automation Center up here, we can see our pre-existing automations, which I've made beforehand. we'll just go through these and we'll see how they affect our workflow. So we'll start with this one, which is fairly basic. Right, whenever a new item is created, I'll be notified. If we just go into the details here, we can also see that you can personalize this message and actually pull information from the board itself. So as you can see, hi, a new project got approved. It will give me the project's name, and it will remind me to make sure to assign a start date. Fairly simple. Next, we have when start date arrives and status is not in progress, change it to in progress. Now, again, this is a fairly simple automation, and it basically will add another layer of automation to our automation chain. I will show you here. So basically, again, whenever the start date arrives and the status is not in progress, it will change automatically to in progress, which will trigger another automation. So you can see how these are kind of built layer on top of layer and how they affect each other and create a chain. So the next one, you can see when the status changes to in progress, you'll create a new board and notify the project manager. So you kind of see how all these are connected. Here I make sure I set a start date. Here when the start date arrives, it will change the status to in progress. Once the in progress status is changed, it will create a new board and notify the project manager that is assigned. And we'll show you how this works just a bit here. The rest of these I will go over in a bit. These are more kind of logistical and for organization purposes, but I want to focus on these three automations first, and I'll show you how they work right now. So as I said, whenever a status changes to in progress, a couple of things will happen, but basically a new board will be created and the project manager will be notified. So let's just turn this back, and we'll put this in progress and we'll watch how a new board is created, and I'm the project manager here, so I should get notified as well. Let's watch as it happens. So as you can see on the left hand side here, a new project board has been created, and I received a notification as well as an email, which you can't see. As you can see, hey Ty, a new project has been started for LazyBoy. Make sure to visit their new board and stay on top of their task ahead. And I can actually press on this notification, and I will be taken to my new board. Okay, this board was a template I built earlier, and so I can choose that inside the automation as well to open this up. Great. Now going back to those last four automations on my board, just to show you here. So here I set up whenever a queue changes to Q1, move it to Q1, and so on for Q2, and the same thing for Q3 and 4. Basically, this is an automation that will help me when projects are coming in from my incoming projects board. So let's just bring an incoming project into this high-level board first. So basically, let's look at these automations and see the different automations we have here. So these three are, again, very organizational automations. So basically when the status of a contact changes to approved, I'll just move the item into the in progress projects group. And when the status of contact is either no response or not interested, we'll just archive them, right, to keep things clean and organized on this board. And finally, we want to focus on this one. Whenever a status is changed to approved, we'll create an item in the high-level board and we'll link them in the selected board. So again, let's just see how this works in real time. So if I change the status here to approved, it should move down to this group as well as create a new item in my high-level board. Let's see if it happens. And I should be notified as well. So approved, as you can see, it moved right away to the bottom here. I received a notification as well. A new project has been approved, Honda. Make sure to check it out and assign a start date. So if I click this, I'll be taken to my high-level board, and I will see Honda has been added to my Q2 board because the queue was already set to 2. And that automation here helped ensure that it goes into the correct group. And from here I can set a start date, and that's how the entire workflow kind of comes together. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to clarify. One more thing I wanted to cover here with the automations is our nifty button column, which you can see here on the end. So basically the button column is very useful if you're looking to perform an action such as notifying your team or starting the time tracking tool or moving an item with just a click of a button. This is a column for you. When setting up this column, you'll be taken to our custom automations. So this is where you'll be able to build your very own automations according to your own personal needs and preferences. So inside our automation center, we have different categories, and at the very bottom we have our custom automations where you can build your own automation based on different statuses and different columns you have on your board. And this is what the button column is based off of, right? So the one I've set up here, if I go into the column settings, we can actually see the automation I've set up. When an update and review, which is the column name, is clicked, notify project manager. So again, if I wanted to change this, I can always change it and it will take me to the recipe itself. But again, this is a very nifty and very useful automation tool you can use right from your board and trigger an automation manually through here. Great, so now let's talk about our integrations. So we'll hop back into our incoming projects board. So most of us work not just on one platform, right? We mostly work on multiple tools, and this can cause information silos where certain teams who work from tools see information in those tools, but others don't have access to them. So our integrations solve this issue by allowing you to connect all of your tools with monday.com so that information flows into your boards and can be viewed and used by more people across your organization. So if we look at this board, one integration tool that is very popular and highly effective is our email integration. So we offer both an email integration with Outlook and Gmail. As you can see here, I have a Gmail integration set up. This is covered in our intermediate webinar. So just to cover this again, when the status of a contact changes to this status, I will send an email to my email column. In our integration center, we have a bunch more platforms we can connect with. I won't go through all of them right now. Our highly used ones are, again, Jira, Salesforce, Slack is a big one. We can update the Slack channel itself, and we can also update monday.com from Slack. Zoom as well. Again, all of these are highly effective and they will advance your workflow greatly. I suggest you check those out. We actually have a lot of information as well on the knowledge base inside monday.com as well. So I suggest you check those out. Cool, so now we're going to finish up by talking about our dashboards and the different capabilities we have there. So the dashboards visualize our entire workflow and help you get different insights to create visual and easy to digest reports, which are always in sync with the changes across the boards they are attached to. So again, just to summarize, all of this information is feeding from the actual boards here. So I can connect the boards into this dashboard and use widgets to display this information. So you can create your own customized dashboard by adding different widgets to it, as I've done here. Every widget can contain information from multiple boards and focuses on a different way of looking at your data. Just so you guys know, a Pro Plan dashboard can reflect up to 20 boards, and the Standard Plan can reflect up to 10 boards. So as you can see here, I've set up a few widgets. I'll go through them and I'll actually set up together with you. So here we can see a chart widget, which is very useful for analyzing data across your entire account rather than just looking at one area or one board. For example, here I took a budget breakdown of all of the projects we have to get a very visual display of how we're spending the money and how each project is allocated in terms of the budget. On the left here we have our battery widget where we can see the progress of the different tasks we have, and how the team is progressing. So if we actually click on one of these statuses, for example, if I want to see all of the projects which are in progress, I can click on this and it'll actually be taken to a breakdown of the different projects that are in progress, the different projects that are pending, and the projects that are done as well. Below that we have our number widget, which again is just, it could be used in a few different ways. I can choose if it does a summary of the numbers, I can choose if it averages, takes a median, the minimum, the maximum, and so on. Very useful for just displaying information and seeing it very obvious in one place. At the very top here, just a nice text widget to kind of personalize this dashboard. This is going to be our 2021 dashboard for our upcoming project. Below that we have our workload widget, which we saw on the board views. So I'm not going to go through that right now. And once again, a different view of the chart. If we want to add a new widget, all we have to do is go into edit mode. From here we can add a widget through here. These are our 4 most used widgets. Of course, we have many, many more in our dashboard center. So as you can see, we have a bunch more throughout these categories, and we can also add from the apps marketplace I talked about earlier. So if I were to set up let's say a battery widget for just one of the boards, because this is looking a bit messy right now, let's just connect one board to it. So let's say a single project board. Let's do IKEA. And here I can alter which status is being displayed. So I want obviously to see the status of the tasks. If I go to more settings, I can change this label here. So let's say if it wasn't a tasks, but rather projects that are going live, I could change this to live and play around with this tab. So again, up to you how you want to control this label. And you can also choose which groups are being displayed. So if you don't want to see all of your groups, that's also a nice way to filter those. And you can also filter the widget through here. So for each widget, you can also use the filter tool to filter it by person, by different statuses, or by any other different column you can see here. So again, a very visual and powerful tool we have for reporting and seeing a macro overview of your entire workflow on your entire account. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is how you can search for help. So if you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our support. If you go down here to the question mark on the left-hand side, you see we have our webinar page here, our contact us page here, where you can email our incredible support team that will get back to you very quickly, or you can watch more tutorial videos. And of course, you can search anything here and look for relevant resources. So now you're ready to get started with your advanced workflow. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to support@monday.com. We are available 24/7. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.